Welcome back to the channel, and just if you did not notice, that was just a slight recap of the last episode. This one is the same figure, but it's even more complicated. Why? Because I just wanted to learn something different. So this time I added to the backpack the sequential lights, and I had to drill into that jetpack to provide that sequence of lights to be, well, installed. It's a sequence of 6 lights. They call these the Night Rider lights because they light up in that sequence. Here I am just testing the actual jetpack, the exhaust. So I took 2 of those lights and I put them into this. They're actually smaller than those 3mm LEDs. These are chip lights. So they're very, very small. So you don't have to drill anything very big. But as you can see, they do blink and they are very tiny on the inside. So I had to shut down the lights for you to see it like this. I then tested them together. And what I did is I took the last 2 wires and I soldered them together, and then I extended that to the 2 lights so that they light up together in sequence, not one on the left and then the other on the right. I need them to light up sequentially as the light chases to the top, and as it chases back down, they need to shut off. So this is, well, time consuming. And yes, it took me a long time to do this. And then after I did that, I went ahead and painted the surface that slight bit purple because I wanted that 70s cartoon look. And that was really the whole purpose of repainting this figure. But I wanted the jetpack to look different. So no, I did not add the accessories to the exhaust like I did on the other. I did, however, wanted to have the eyes also in yellow. And I went through a lot of trial and error to be able to get that. So let me show you what I ended up with on the first try. And remember that these lenses have a small hole in the center, and that's where I fit that 3mm light the last time. Unfortunately, even though I used yellow, well, not only were they small, but well, the lenses are still red. So it just looks bright orange. And that is not what I was out to get. I really wanted the yellow. So I had to rethink this. And again, I went through different phases of trying, or attempts, I should say, not phases, attempts of trying to get this done correctly. And one of them was to, well, change out the LEDs. So I got the Mega LEDs. They're larger. These are white, but I painted them yellow because I want that yellow light to be dispersing from the eyes. And as you can see, the eyes are keyed. Well, I am not going to make the eyes keyed to each one. I just want the lenses. So I made some lenses and it didn't look good. This is what it looks like before I installed it. I did a little light test to make sure the pack was working and the head was also lighting up with the eyes. And as you can see, they do kind of pulse because they do take on the characteristic of that chase light that's in the backpack. Unfortunately, that is very common and typical and characteristic if you are using any kind of effect on a light. For them to stay consistently lit, they would have to have a different circuit, and there's not enough space in a figure like this to have 2 circuits. Most likely there is space in the 12-inch figure, but not in the 7-inch figure. I had to cram all of this into that little backpack, and then the overflow I put into the back, that hole that's in the back. And then I actually had to cut into the torso to wrap the wiring around the torso so that it would be hidden and I wouldn't kink the wires. But anyway, this is what it looks like when you have those pieces put together. Here I'm just waiting for the glue to dry on the jetpack because I can only do it this way. I didn't want to use screws. I didn't want to use magnets because they were just not going to be as strong. And so the battery is going to last me 14 hours, but that's 14 hours of lots and lots of playtime. I really don't plan to change out that battery very often. So it's, for things like this, it's enough battery time to play with. But now, I did mention that I created those lenses for the head. They didn't turn out good. I was really not happy. I thought I could do it with just plain resin. So went ahead and tried doing that, and it just ended up with a bad result. Let me show you what happened. So as the figure comes around, take a look at the head. And yeah, the lenses are yellow. They are transparent, but they're too transparent. And all you see is that white dot. You see right through the lens. Besides, they're kind of wonky. And they've got some bubbles in them, and they've got some marks from the brush strokes, and I just didn't like it. So I had to rethink the process and find out what I was going to do, because I really wanted them to be yellow even if the lights weren't on. I mean, that's the way they were in the cartoon. They were yellow all the time. And the lights weren't on. Well, in this case, I want them to be yellow even when the eyes are not lit or backlit. So I went ahead and reused the resin that I have, but this time I added a dye to the resin. But before doing that, I had to create a mold because I wanted an exact fit. So I took the silicone mold material that I have, I heated it up in hot water, put it into a little cup. This is the resin lens that I made, and I was not careful enough with this because it's still too transparent. It's not diffused enough. Besides, the color is all over the place. Now, this is the original lens. It is obviously very smooth, solid color. This is what I want, and that's not what I had. On the back side of this, you see where you would place a 3mm LED to light it up. But I didn't want a red lens. I wanted yellow. So I had to make it in a silicone mold like this. And as you can tell, it still didn't turn out nice and smooth because there is some cracking or some marks in the bottom of it. Now, what I had to do to correct it, I'll show you in just a moment. But this is what it would look like if you have it too thin. I had to mix my yellow dye into my resin to then, well, kind of make this. This is one of my attempts. It's still too thin, as you can tell. And it's really, really thin at the edges. Not enough to sand. So this is my, well, one of my attempts. And as you can tell, you can barely see. It's got some bubbles in it. And it's got those fractures at the top. And instead of having to redo the whole thing or sand it, I ended up cheating. So I took the leftover resin that I had, and I just dashed it on or dabbed it onto the top of it and let it drip over the edges. And then I just hit it with a UV light. And let me show you what I did. I just held it with a pair of tweezers as close to the edge as I could. And then I added UV resin that has the dye in it. It kind of looks like honey. And I just kind of doused it over the top all the way to the edge. And I allowed it to harden as it smoothed out. Not only did that fill in all of those gaps, but it advanced the work so much quicker that I didn't have to do any sanding or any trimming. It was just so nice to do it this way. Now keep in mind that the more layers you add, the denser that yellow becomes, or more opaque, so less light will actually transmit through it. But in the end, you will have a yellow pair of eyes that will actually look like the animated cartoon. Now, in case you're wondering, this is the dye that I used. And one drop goes a long way. I ended up using about 3 drops here because I wanted it to be a little bit more dense. So the less dye you used, the thinner or the clearer, more transparent it is going to be. But if you have it too transparent, then you're not going to get the color effect. If you have it too dense, then it's going to block all of your light. Now, as far as painting the figure in the end, I should say sealing it, because I did paint that helmet a slight purple, and then I finished it off with a Tamiya clear coat, the X22 you see in the screen, and I thinned it out just using a couple dabs of nail polish. Now, if you're going to do this, you want to make sure that your airbrush is completely clean. So use that nail polish or whatever airbrush remover you want, cleaner, and clean it out. Otherwise, you're going to get this. And you want to test it before you do your sealing, because if you have a lot of gunk in your airbrush, it's going to come out and look like this. And it's going to be all over your work. And you're going to be upset. So yeah, just take a scrap piece of material, cardboard, little piece of wood like this, and spray over it. Make sure the brush is completely clean. I had to clean this out at least 4 times with that thinner or that nail polish remover before going in and actually finishing off the project. So I'm going to leave you now with the actual finished project, and then we'll see you here next time. In the meantime, keep customizing. Enjoy customizing those figures. We'll see you next time.